All right, so we are live now with Sarah Paulson, and I'm just counting how many heads. There's only one of you here today, is that right?
For today, yeah.
And you know what? On American Horror Story Freak Show, you played both Dot and Bette. And before we get into the challenges, what was your reaction when you found out you'd be playing a two-headed person? This is really the first time this has ever been done on television.
Yeah. Well, I leave it to Ryan Murphy to sort of throw something at me that I thought, at first I thought there was no way they were going to really do it. He mentioned it to me in a kind of casual way that this was his idea for next year. I mean, he and Jessica had been talking a lot about that was the idea for the season. I think people have talked about before. Jessica had this idea about this, and Ryan sort of took it in this whole other American Horror Story kind of way. And his idea was for me to play conjoined twins, and I thought, I cannot get too excited about doing this because I'm sure they're going to come to realize that there's no way to make this work. It's one thing to play a twin where you like tape yourself to another actor and you're playing one half of the twin, or if you're playing both twins, but you don't have to be attached to one another. So you can be in opposite sides of the room, or like they did in The Social Network, or adaptation where you're able to, do things with the camera. And here we did things with the camera, but it was all, with my body playing, two people at the same time. So I just thought they're going to come to realize this is not a feasible, realizable idea, and I just thought I'm going to be disappointed, so I'm just not going to hold on to it. And I kind of don't think I really believed it until he sent me the first script, and I thought, I can't believe this is really happening, and then I get to do this. It was really exciting.
I was excited when you sent that initial tweet of the two faces. I'm like, how are they going to do this? And you guys pulled it off magnificently. And I'm going to dispel the rumors that that maybe you didn't play both. You actually played both parts, and you played. They had their own personalities, their own voices, really. And, so if, there's this rumor that Emmy voters don't like to watch horror, that they're scared of horror. I think they should really just watch this for your performance, basically. It was really, really groundbreaking.
That's very kind of you to say. And I played both characters. I worked very hard to make sure that the girls had two distinct personalities. You're right. I'm glad that you noticed that they had two different voices. I did try to do that. I'm sure sometimes I wasn't as expert as I could have been. By the time we got to the middle to the end of the season, I felt like there was nothing they could throw at me within this world that I couldn't pull off in terms of the technicalities of the things we were doing. In the beginning, it was an incredibly terrifying, overwhelming deal in terms of how we were going to figure out how we were going to do it. And I remember asking them if I could have an earwig because I wanted to pre-record my dialogue when I had scenes with myself so that I could hear my own voice in my head, because they originally thought, well, we'll hire an actress who can read off camera. And I said, no, these girls communicate telepathically. They share a body. I want to hear my own voice in my head when I'm playing these scenes. So, but it became, all those little technical things that you decide you need to play the part become very much a big part of the cruise day and everything else, because sound had to come over and hand me my thing and switch the earwigs depending on whomever I was playing. And it was a lot. It was a great challenge, and it was a challenge, but I feel very proud to have been a part of it. I really do.
And, I heard Jessica Lange say that she had some trouble focusing on who she was talking to. You had to keep reminding her, it's me, look at me.
I did. We came up very early on in shooting. They were shooting over my shoulder, and she just didn't know who was speaking and who was supposed to be talking. And I tried to throw my voice to do that character, and when my head was here, and I tried to, and it was really hard for her, and she just did not know who to look at. So in between takes, I would just, or while we were shooting, when the camera was over my shoulder, I would just go, this one. And then she was going, and then it was pretty, I'm sure there's a gag reel somewhere just in that of every actor working with me trying to figure out who the hell they were talking to. Some of the actors were a little bit more adept at it than others. Some of them took to it very quickly, and some people were just like, I don't know where to look. And then you watch some people probably tried not to look at me because they just thought, I'm not even going to bother. If I don't look at you, I won't get into any kind of trouble.
Who was really good at it?
Finn was really good at it. Finn was good at it.
Finn
really knew sort of instinctually where to look. And that was great because it meant that in our scenes in the beginning, I didn't have to spend a lot of time going, so when my head is here, Dot's eyes, because I got very well versed in terms of, being able to communicate what was happening with the other head. You know, when I was going to be playing her, I would know that my body position would shift here, that the plane of the eyes would be a little higher because my head was tilted. So it was all that kind of technical stuff that I've never ever experienced before. But he was very, very quick to assess how all that was going to work. It was great.
And we have a great fan question about these two characters from Jessie. Jessie wants to know, did you use different sources of inspiration to play each twin? Or what, I guess, what was this, where did you get
I actually watched a movie called Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Robert Altman movie. And I watched Sandy Dennis's performance in that movie. That was sort of my inspiration for Bette. In terms of her, she has a kind of simple way of being. She has tremendous love for James Dean. She has a whole fantasy life in her mind that she has had this relationship and that James Dean has fathered her child and all this kind of stuff. And it's a little wackier than what Bette was, but in terms of her innocence and her commitment to the things she believes and her fantasy about movie magazines and all that stuff, I kind of took a great deal of inspiration for that. For Dot, I just looked into my dark black soul and and found a way within myself to pull that out. That one was a little bit easier for me to access. You know, I think in life we spend a lot of times trying to sort of protect ourselves from, you know, any experience in life that could be painful or scary. And so Dot is very good at sort of covering, and she's got a much harder shell. And that was so open. That was the thing I had to kind of try to allow that. And it was funny because when we were really doing it fully, I would find Bette could cry. I could cry as Bette so easily. And with Dot, it just never, it's a very interesting thing that happens to your mind when you're playing those parts, because your body doesn't know, as an actor, your body doesn't know that you're not doing something real. So when you have an emotional scene, your body is actually feeling something, whereas your mind knows. So it's just very interesting, whichever part of my brain was working for whomever I was playing. It was just a very fascinating thing to have happen to me.
I'm really happy that both girls kind of got their happy ending. I don't want to spoil anything in case people are catching up, but you know, you mentioned at the Paley Festival, you've never died on American Horror Story before. You're the undying character.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's a pretty nice badge of honor to have. I'll take it on a show where people get killed left, right, and center. Although sometimes the way you die on Horror Story can become quite a thing. And I've never had that experience where the death of your character is this big event, which is so kind of great. But I feel proud to be that person. I don't know if it'll last. I can't last forever, right? He's gonna have to, just by virtue of the fact that people know now that I'm the character that's never died. I'm gonna have to die, right? I don't think.
I don't know. I kind of want you to keep that streak going for as long as it.
I would like to too. Yeah, I would like to too.
And another fan question. This is from Jenna. Do you have a favorite scene with Jessica Lange, either from Freak Show or over the years? I think we're all going to miss her on the show.
Yeah, there's no way not to miss her. She's such an extraordinary person and actress, and brings such an extraordinary presence to the show. You know, there's a couple of them. The one that sticks out in my mind most is from season 2, in the scene in the common room in the asylum after Jude has had her own corrective therapy, her own shock therapy, and she comes in and she basically says to me that she knows that she had done wrong by me and that she wants to make it right. And that scene was very, very fun to play. I liked doing that. But pretty much, if there's any scene in the world that was my favorite on Horror Story, it was probably something I did with Jessica.
Right. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed her with Tom O'Neill, and since she's won the Emmys and she's won the Oscars and the Golden Globes, I said, do you have advice for someone that's never given a speech before? Like, what kind of advice would you give for?
Oh, I know what she said, but go ahead.
Wait, you already know?
I think so.
Well, she told us, she says, keep it short and simple. She said, don't thank God, don't thank your mom, and don't thank your team.
The team. I knew it was the team. We make a joke where we're sort of like, who are you thanking? The San Francisco 49ers? Like, what is it? And I know it's true. But at the same time, I know that people that you know work very hard on your behalf, your agents and your managers, your publicists, all the things that go into it now. And you know, she really came up in a time when so much less of that was part of the story. You know, and so and she's just one of those actresses that you have to admire, because this kind of, she doesn't get caught up in all the sort of Hollywoodization of things. She really just shows up and wants to do the work, and the rest of it, she just, I think it's not her favorite part of it, but so I understand. But I'm sure if I ever got out there, I'd be thanking God, I'd be thanking baby Jesus, I'd be thanking my team, I'd be thanking every person I ever met in my entire life. I would probably talk too long. I'd probably cry. I mean, I would do everything wrong because I'm just not that cool.
The Gold Derby odds are looking okay. I don't want to jinx anything. You're currently at #1.
Yeah, okay.
Other people in your category are Kathy Bates, of course, Monique, and Sarandon, I think, is in there. So there's a lot of heavy hitters.
I've been, I feel very honored that when I get nominated, I'm up against these sort of, very, very celebrated, anointed actresses whom I've always admired. I always feel like, pinch me, I can't believe I'm in this company. And then I also alternately feel like, well, I mean, how will I ever, that's never going to happen when I'm nominated with people like that. And so the nomination has become something that is very meaningful to me on its own, obviously, because it's a very special thing too, so obviously.
And Emmy voters, they really like, or they love when people play multiple characters or multiple personalities. So you do have a leg up this year with playing Dot and Bette. And, looking back over the years, there was Toni Collette for United States of Terror. She played all the different personalities. And then I'm blanking now. I think one of Alec Baldwin's episodes for 30 Rock, he actually played 2 characters and won an Emmy for that.
Yeah. Well, I guess it shows a certain kind of range, I guess, within the show itself, as opposed to thinking about all the works an actor may or may not have done, but they kind of think about all the different ways in which they bring things to the story and to their characters. But when you see it on the same show, I think maybe it highlights something for people, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the O.J. Simpson story you're doing for Ryan Murphy,
yes.
I know you just started filming that. What can you tease us anything about that? When is it going to be airing?
I actually don't know when it's going to be airing, actually, and we've just begun. And all I can say is that I think the performances that these actors are giving is it's a little bit jaw-dropping and totally intimidating, because we all have, it's a very big deal to play a person, a living person, and certainly a person who's still alive, walking around the planet and being responsible for telling their stories or interpreting their story as the writers are, and as you are as the actor, and as the director, would like to have you do it. But it feels like a big responsibility. I don't want to let Marcia Clark down. I want to do right by her. I have an enormous amount of respect for her and have learned so much about her, as much as you can. I mean, who knows? She may feel that all the things out there written about her are not true, but I've read so much stuff and watched so much footage on her. But the detail work that John Travolta is doing, and Cuba and David Schwimmer, I mean, there is so much. There's just an extraordinary. I mean, I think people are going to be really, really excited. It's going to be impressive. I'm impressed. I don't know what that means, but I just sort of sit there sometimes and I'm like, oh, right, I have to talk. This is, and I have a great hairdo. I can't even tell you about that hairdo.
Ooh, interesting. You always wear the wigs on these shows with Ryan Murphy.
I know, I got the wig going. So
Melissa wants to know, do you think your character in Hotel, the new season, will that have fans scared of you being the biggest badass girl? That's what she wants to know.
If I'm doing anything right, it will. I want to scare some people. I've never played anybody on the show that has, there's always been a level of heroism to some, Lana Winters, of course, but I love that because she was so flawed and she was such a sort of, desperately ambitious person. And it was so great to play a character that wasn't a hero just because she did everything for other people. It was so self-serving sometimes. And I think people do things like that. And I really admired the writers for being brave enough to let that be part of the story. But I remember just being so jealous of Jessica during Coven and even during, always she gets to sort of toss off these one-liners and cane people and, it just smoke lots of cigarettes. And so I hope I get to do all stuff like that. And just because it's a great deal of fun. I haven't really played a lot of villains in my life, and I hope he's telling the truth about me being the baddest bad girl or whatever he said in town. Mm-hmm. I think he might be right, and I just hope it's all that.
And another one from our Twitter fan, Kristen. She wants to know if Ryan Murphy wanted to make a sequel to a season of Horror Story, which season would you want to continue as like a regular show?
Well, I mean, I'm so boring because it's so predictable. But Asylum, I think it'd be great to see, you know, everything that happened. I mean, it's just, of course, it's just very narcissistic of me, but Lana Winters I thought was a very interesting character, and I would have loved to have seen the interim of how she, you know, that time from when she got out of the asylum and integrating herself back into her life and all the reporting and everything that she did that made her who she was by the end of the asylum when she was, you know, a 75-year-old woman. I would be interested to see and to play, really, all that stuff that happened in there, and to see what happened, you know, in a more detailed way to Jude, all the time she spent in that asylum. And I don't know. I just loved that season. I thought it was expertly done from a writing standpoint too. I thought it was really wonderful.
And back to Freak Show, I've heard some stories from the cast about some of the crazy things that happened. Like with, I think Kathy Bates said there was maybe a crocodile in the water when she was filming a scene.
Oh yeah.
You guys were filming in New Orleans. Do you have any like fun stories from the set?
Oh God, I mean, some of the stories from the set are not something I could repeat, and I promise you, Kathy Bates was telling the least interesting stories that could be told. Because there was a time when she and I spent an evening in a cab waiting for a Domino's pizza to be ready. For 20 minutes, we sat in the cab and then took that pizza back. You don't even want to know. There are some offset stories that are pretty magnificent, but I'm going to keep those to myself because
write a book one day before you retire. Write a book.
The horror story book, yes, it's too incriminating to us both, the things that happened that night. But we had a wonderful time in New Orleans, and the crocodile being, you know, basically waiting out in the water by craft service when we were shooting out on location. Whenever we were at the compound, we called it the compound, where the Ferris wheel was and where the big top was and all that stuff. There were all kinds of creatures and mosquitoes and the horrifying sun that made Kathy almost faint one day, made me almost faint one day. It's a kind of heat you just can't experience unless you're there. And we're wearing all these sort of period costumes and layers, and Kathy had that beard on. It was great.
And you had to be out there twice as long. You had to film your scenes basically twice.
Yes, I do think some of the actors really dreaded working with me, which is, I think, as you could see as the show went on, I had more and more scenes by myself, which I'm sure had to do with people wanting to not be there for 17 hours. I mean, if you knew you had a scene with the twins, people were like, oh God. And I was like, you know, I am sitting right here. Thank you very much. But I mean, because it was not even that I had to do them twice. The part about it that was so difficult really was that I could never start the day and do all of my dot coverage. Do a wide shot, a tight shot, a close shot, and then move to bed. I had to go back and forth between each girl in every single camera size. So I was constantly having to switch personalities and playing the different wants that I had that were often disparate from one another. Their tempers, their mannerisms, remembering what I did with my hands. It was just hard, and I had to go back and forth. I didn't have a chance to play everything all the way through. And often what I would ask to do is to go second. In terms of if I was playing a scene with Jessica, Jessica would go first so that I could play the scene full out as both girls for her. So that then when they turn around on me, I would have played the scene, excuse me, full out already as both of them.
I guess I never realized watching it how hard and how challenging this role really was. And this is a really interesting interview. I'm so glad that you're able to talk about all of these challenges and how I think at the end of the day, it really, really didn't seem that hard. And I guess that has to do with how well you did and how well the production staff did, that they made it seem so flawless. We
had the most incredible hair and makeup, and also the wardrobe. I mean, I had 50 dresses because I'd have to wear a different dress for each character, depending on, you know, it was really hard. And the special effects teams, I think, were exquisite. But it was the hardest thing I've ever done, for sure, because it taxed my brain, not just in the way that it normally does when you're acting in terms of your imagination, but it taxed my brain from just I am a one person with one body, and I had to I sometimes had to sit on my hand to remember not to use my other side of my body, so that then when I went to play the other part, I'd sit on the other side of my hand so that I could keep this still and open and back and remember that there was another being attached to me. I had them build me an underarm piece that would sit under my clothes, that I would switch sides depending on whomever I was playing, so that I would remember that I had that I had this other person here. And, you know, I had to pick up things with my left hand as Bette, and I'm not left-handed. So it just took parts of my brain, you know, and running lines alone with yourself and playing a scene alone with yourself is very difficult. There's that one scene in episode 9 where they basically are saying goodbye to each other, or they think they're going to say goodbye to each other. They're going to be separated. And I had no one to look at. I had no one to play the scene with. I had to do it all with myself and my own voice in my ear. And for my money, the acting part that's exciting and that is the most informative in terms of how you're going to play a scene is looking into another actor's eyes and whatever they're bringing or giving. And when I don't have any of that, it all had to come from my brain and my imagination and keeping my heart open to impulses that were happening based on what I would imagine she would do, even though I would be playing it in 5 minutes when we move the camera. So, and sometimes we had to start the whole scene and I'm playing Dot and I don't even know what Bette's going to do yet because I haven't played it yet. You know, and I had to kind of imagine, and it was hard in that way because it was hard to ever feel fully aware of whether or not we had gotten it or not. Sometimes you walk away from a scene and you go, I think we nailed it. But it was impossible because I had nothing to judge it on because I couldn't look at anyone else's face, and I just had to trust our directors and our script supervisors and, you know, the editors, and it was just, but it was a scary thing. It was scary.
I think you nailed it. I think your fans think you nailed it. Now it's up to the Emmy voters to put their stamp of approval on it. And you know, I made this joke when I saw you last, but I'm going to make it again. Do you win 2 Emmys for this? One for one for Bette. I think you deserve both.
That's very kind of you. I like to think, even though they are 2 different people, I had one body, so 1 Emmy would be all right with me. I would really, you know, I feel very honored to even be considered at all and to be in the mix at all in the way that I am. I feel like the show is, people really respond to it. It gives actors incredible opportunities to do really complicated things you don't see anywhere else. So I feel grateful to be invited to the party at all, I have to say.
All right. Well, best of luck going forward, and we can't wait to see Hotel and American.
I can't wait to give you Hotel, believe me.
Yeah.
I know some things that I'm not telling you, and I can't wait.
Did you notice I didn't even ask because I
know.
knew?
Well, because you know that I'll be killed. There's just, you know, body bag on Hollywood Boulevard. It'll be me. I can't do it. I want to, but I can't do it.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Bye.